When you think consistently, I don't matter, people don't see me, I'm not valued, there is an anger and resentment building up. It's very clear that there's one or two beliefs that actually rule your world. And if you don't like the world you're in, that's what you need to change. You don't need to quit your job if you want to start over. You just need to change the energy that drives you. If you don't honor your want of more, you're dying. It's like the moment people think, oh, this is enough, they settle, they internally start to die.
Welcome to the Trailblazers, the space where high-achieving women finally exhale and feel deeply understood.
We are Brittany Anderson and Disha Solanki, two leaders who have built, scaled, exited, and supported multi-8 and 9-figure companies
while carrying far more than most people ever see.
Here we go where most conversations stop.
The burnout, the pressure, the ambition, the identity shifts, the invisible load, and the moments you almost quit.
This is where the real story begins.
Trailblazers.
Today's conversation is with someone who not only talks about reinvention, but has lived it in multiple ways across completely different worlds. Our guest today started off in education, but moved into film and TV, and now is building Dark Runner. We're working with high-achieving people who have everything on paper, but know something isn't quite right underneath. But what stands out to me about Dr. Kim Dang is how she shows up and makes her moves. There's a willingness to walk away from what no longer fits, to trust her own direction, even when it doesn't make sense on paper, and to keep evolving without boxing herself into one identity. Many of our listeners will recognize that feeling of outgrowing something, even when it looks right and logical. Kim, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the Trailblazers. What I would love to do is start at the beginning, because you said that you've lived in a few continents. And how did you get to be the Harvard professor and mathematician? And I hope I got that right.
It was Yale. I never lived in Asia, but both of my parents are from Asia. They're from Vietnam. My dad from North Vietnam, my mom from the South, and they met in West Germany in a German class. So that is how I got into the world. So I came into this world basically already parts of two, right? It's very different parts. And I grew up in Germany and Switzerland. Most of the time I spent in my teenage years was in Switzerland. My formative years were really learning also how to adjust from moving from a city into a tiny little village in, I usually say, the middle of nowhere. And that was interesting too, the city versus the village experience. And then later on, I moved to the US. So I usually say that, this is Asian and my upbringing is European and my mindset is American.
That is in itself, I just think of how much rich experience and culture and dynamics, and I just appreciate that journey so much. So, when you think about talking about continuation of your journey, so where you got professionally, right? Because again, we'll stress like who you are professionally is not always who you are as a human. There's a delineation, there's a separation. So Kim, talk about where your path led you to first professionally and that kind of awakening that happened for you where you pivoted.
Yeah. I would say I think my fuel in my early years was definitely based on anger, pain, fear. When people are running from something, it gives them a really huge drive. And I want to acknowledge that humans are very prone to running from something they want to avoid, avoiding poverty, avoiding shame, avoiding being left out, avoiding being alone. So a lot of human behavior is driven by those emotions. And for me, it was also rage, which was a very strong fuel. And that sustained me throughout my early 20s, my teenage years earlier. And it gave me the fuel also to finish my PhD in mathematics and go to Yale. It was really like this huge force that kept me going. And that force was basically for me at that point in time, definitely, I do matter. I just show everyone that I can. No one has anything to say, and I just want to show everyone that they're wrong about me. So it was really a let's show them kind of energy. And then when I was at Yale, I kind of, that energy couldn't sustain me anymore. Whatever carried me to that point in time was just really making me depressive and sad and sick as well. And I think there's something to be said about the energy that fuels us, right? It's like we're driving a car and it runs on regular gas, but you put diesel in it so the car breaks down. And we human beings, we actually thrive on joy and fun, love, ease, happiness. But when we're consistently fueling ourselves with fear, anger, pain, avoiding something, and use that as a thriving force, then sooner or later we're gonna break down, whether it's our body rebelling with allergies or sickness or depression or other illnesses, the surroundings responding to it. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't really work long term. So, what I found when I was at Yale being a professor in mathematics is that I need to change that fuel. I need to completely reset my life and change that fuel. I need to get the diesel out and get a regular gas in. And that is what I did. I started to really ask the right questions about what brings me joy, what makes my life worth living. And step by step, I found the answer. That didn't mean that I immediately changed it on the outside, but within, I understood okay, I need to really do little things that made my life be okay. It was also first acceptance and then having joy eating again, joy going to the movie theaters, and then realizing that the most fun I had was around creative people. So then at some point, I realized okay, since I have the most fun time and the most joy and happiness and feel the most ease around creative people, I need to be in a surrounding with creative people. And that's when I actually jumped and became a film producer. So the moment I understood that, the change was very swift. Within half a year, I worked movie set with Viola Davis. Within a year, I had produced my own feature movie. You can buy it. It's called Everything is Wonderful. That's like more than 10 years ago at this point. And from there, I just kept fueling my life with this energy of fun and joy. And that changed everything.
I want to go back, Kim, a little bit. What was the anger, pain, fear, and rage that you talk about that you were running away from? And what was it that people got wrong about you?
You know, every one of us has what we call core program in our industry of personal growth, right? The core program of not being enough or not matter or not being able to do enough, not measuring up to other people, imposter syndromes. Everyone has that in a way. And for me, it was always I don't matter. People don't value me. People don't see me. So I had to really change that. But that was basically what drove me a very long time. And that was the anger. When you think consistently, I don't matter, people don't see me, I'm not valued, there is an anger and resentment building up. And that is at times all I could see, that no one understood what I was thinking. No one understood what I was feeling. No one understood the reasons behind my actions. I felt consistently misunderstood. And that is very much a fuel for anger and resentment and pain and, disconnect to other people. I was also feeling very much alone a lot of times because of that.
Mm.
Not that I was alone, you always can shift the perspective and understand it from a bigger picture. But that was really the fuel. Yeah.
So, kind of carrying along those lines, Kim, and it's interesting because oftentimes within our Trailblazers community, this has come up more than once, that conversation of loneliness. You could be surrounded by all kinds of people, but still feel deeply lonely. And I think there's two things there. Number one, it's when you have achieved a level of success but you have something that's still gaping open in you. And number two, I think sometimes that lonely feeling can come from maybe that lack of courage to make a big change. So there's this inner turmoil going on. So, for any woman that's listening, and our listeners tend to be very successful women, people who've built success, who want more out of life unapologetically, but still maybe hesitate a little bit to take a leap of faith or make a big change in their lives. So, you, Kim, as you're talking through this, like, I can only imagine, like, we were just talking before between the three of us, like, we can only imagine how difficult it probably was to be like, you know what? I have an incredible job as a professor in mathematics, which in itself is a very difficult thing to get, like your PhD in mathematics. Like, that is, most people are like, what? Like, I can't even fathom that. So you have this journey, you have this perceived success, and then you're like, you know what? This isn't joyful for me. I'm going to leap over here. What would you say to somebody that is trying to muster up that courage to take the leap that for whatever reason is holding back?
Yes, such a good question. And I've been actually wondering that myself, what made it possible for me to leap. And in the beginning, it was a lot of time I didn't have a choice. And, to this day, in some way, I sometimes feel like I don't really have a choice but to follow the inner impulse if I don't want to make my body sick. I've had migraines, I've had body pains, I've had depression, I've had not clinical depression, but I really felt a sense of this cannot go on like this kind of feeling. And so that made me understand that there has to be another way. And so I really hope that women or people in general don't need to hit that rock bottom moment, but the rock bottom moment oftentimes helps to understand, okay, I need some sort of way out. If someone comes to me and actually feels pretty good, but feels, okay, I don't live up to my potential, I want to change, I would really, and not I would, I actually, with my clients, I always start with, what do you want? What do you want and why do you want it? We talked about the 7 layers of why in our last session. I always use the 7 layers of why to really dig deeper in order to figure out, is it a human need, basic human need you want to cover, or is it actually a higher vision? And then from there, building it up and understanding what could happen with your life gets the excitement going. And that is the fuel we need for excitement, for joy, for fun, for love, for ease, for happiness, right? And we're moving in that way completely away from the fear of not being enough. So that is really the magic pill that I see usually that works very well. And it works also with me.
You say that you had that fear of not being enough, something I think a lot of our listeners will definitely resonate with. And I know that Brittany and I will resonate with too. Where do you think that comes from? Where did it come from for you? Because you're very highly accomplished. Even before you did a pivot, right? You've achieved so much. What made you feel like you weren't enough?
So, everyone comes into this world and being conditioned because we have parents or caregivers who are conditioning us. And so it's not their fault, but I would say it's because and things of them, of the caregivers, my parents, or people around me who conditioned me that made me feel like this so that I could eventually overcome it. And it's a journey, really. And I think it's really important to not fall into the trap of, oh, this is me now. I got conditioned and I can't do anything about it. No, it's a journey. We need to be conditioned in order to feel something to resist against. And then that resistance fuels also the growth to a certain point until we can't do it anymore. And that allows us to shift to the joy, fun, happiness moment we all, I think, very much need.
So I'm hearing, like, listening to this, the journey and the depth of it and the challenge and the overcome and all of this. And Kim, I cannot help but pivot back to maybe a humbling moment because this is the stuff that we all want to hear, right? Like, because we're all like, yes, it's fluid and we move and we change and we take leaps and bounds and we move forward here. And then we get, I'm just going to be very blunt, we get punched in the face by life. Like, I don't know how else to say it, where we're like, wow, we are very humbled. So if I remember correctly, there's like a story about like a garbage can or hiding behind something. Like, Kim, please share this because it was just, I think it's so wonderful and such a great testament to the real journey.
So, first of all, I need to say I'm getting humbled every single day. I feel like once you're on this journey, it's just, oof, okay. And I say that usually in terms of, okay, let's put Kim aside and let's have Kim have a break and let's have my higher self actually step in because the egoic part of me is never gonna hit the goals I want. And that is super humbling. And I train that every single day. But yes, when I decided to change my career from mathematician to working in the film industry, my first job, my very first job was actually on an indie movie called Custody with Viola Davis. And that was a great experience. And the first AD gave me a staff position in his AD team. But after that movie, I had to figure out things by myself. So I took any job that was available, and that was in general, these were day playing jobs, we call it in the industry. So look up jobs like additional PA jobs for TV shows like Blue Bloods and Blacklist and Law and Order. So these were not very, glamorous jobs at all. So I remember one day I was an additional PA on Blue Bloods. They had me lock up a parking lot for a stunt scene. It was scorching hot in the middle of summer, and I had to prevent cars and people coming out of that parking lot in order to prevent people to walk into the stunt scene. So I was literally hiding behind a garbage can so I was out of the picture and it was really smelly and it was really hot. I wasn't able to go pee because I would have to walk through the entire, stunt set. And I was sitting there for 5 hours or so without anything, without I think I had a bottle of water, which was, not sustaining me throughout the 5 hours. But I was sitting there for 5 hours and thought, if my parents could see me now, they would really, I mean, they would probably disown me. And I just couldn't believe that me being a Yale professor 3 months earlier would end up behind a garbage can for a type day, and that would be my job. And I think I earned like $12 an hour for that or so. Yeah, but it was really a very humbling moment.
Like, what made you go from, I know you said you like creative, right? But you went from maths to TV and, movies. Why didn't you choose art or any other photography? So much in the creative industries, right? Writing.
Here's
What was it about TV?
So here's the thing, I studied actually film. So I'm not a complete novice in film. I studied film studies beside math. No one has ever done that before at the University of Zurich that time. I had to write a letter to the director of the University of Zurich begging him to let me actually study film and math. So I was the first, probably the last, because it was totally not compatible. The classes would always overlap and it was a nightmare. But I graduated in film studies and math. So that said, I had experience being around film people, and I was running a film festival with a couple of friends, that a film festival that became actually also qualified. It's called the International Film Festival of Winterthur. And I had, in that sense, experienced the world of film and filmmaking. So when I thought of switching, I felt like didn't want to do exactly the same. Didn't want to go exactly into the film festival world, although I did speak to a couple of people like Frederic Boyer from the Tribeca Film Festival and David Nugent, who used to be running the Hamptons Film Festival. I was exploring that path as a programmer again or in another position, but I thought, you know what, let's do it differently this time and let's see how it works on the other side. And I'm in New York, so this is actually a perfect environment to really explore and jump into the film industry behind the camera. That was the reason. And you know what? It wasn't actually also in the end the film itself, even though I love film and TV. It was in the end the thought being around a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and just creating something that is bigger than myself or what I could create by myself in an environment that is really exciting and exhilarating.
So I don't want this to seem like a presumptive question, but I cannot help after learning this that you had, call it a dual major, we'll just simplify, in mathematics and in film studies. It just seems you've always been this creative. You've always had this itch in you or this drive for that creative element. Did you go the mathematics route as well because it felt like that's what was expected of you and that was safe? Or was there a part of you that actually truly felt drawn to both avenues?
I had a misunderstanding that having fun is not the purpose of life. And math was really hard. And everyone said, oh, it put so much value in working hard and doing something that was really difficult. And also, that combined with the rage of people thinking of me lowly or thinking about people thinking of me lowly catapulted me into this math journey where I just really did that to spite everyone, to be honest, to spite even my classmates in college who were all the time studying math and being in the library and discussing math. And I was like, I don't care really, but I'm here. And I'm like, and most of the people really didn't like me there because I dropped in maybe once a week in the first couple of years to copy the exercises and then hand them in. And then I would just like leave and go to my film classes or running film festivals or doing other things, to be honest. And so it was really to spite everyone. I would really say the math studies were fueled definitely by anger and by a certain defiance, but not in a good way.
That is really interesting. And I'm just going to bring some light into this before I go the next direction. But as you're talking about the copying and not really caring, I felt I had a point in my journey. I was a senior in high school and I had done really well in math, but not well enough to be in advanced placement calculus. But I felt pressured by a family member that I needed to take that class. I had to show. I don't think I did a like, I'm sorry to my teacher if I don't even remember the name of the teacher, but if you're listening to this, I cheated the entire semester. Like, I had no idea. I don't understand calculus. I don't get it. Like, I'm sitting there going, my brain, I love people and humans and conversation. And here I am staring at a board going, oh my goodness. So, to bring levity to that, I just had that flashback, Kim, as you're sharing your journey and the studying and the not really caring and that side of things. So I have to ask this because you've brought up this, this drive, this ambition, this, even the fuel from anger, the fuel from proving yourself, all of that. So how has your ambition over the year impacted your closest relationships?
That is, first of all, that's such a good question. And before we go there, I really want to also say that, later on when I did my PhD and my thesis and was going deeper into the study. I actually love math. There's nothing really, I discovered it for me. And honestly, I was really good at math. Somehow I was really good. And so, not sure what that was about, but it was definitely a journey I had to go through to also learn a lot about myself.
You were not really good. You got all the way to PhD status. You were freaking amazing. Not many
Yeah.
people get to PhD level. That requires a lot of commitment and a lot of brain power.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, but it's interesting that the ambition and my personal relationships when it comes to romantic life. Oof, we're going into tricky waters here because my romantic life always was, in a way, something I wanted to avoid. Again, the drive of fear, avoiding what was painful. And for me, the romantic life was extremely painful. With the core program, I'm not valued. I don't matter. I'm not seen. Like, you can imagine what kind of relationships I've created from that belief. When you believe something, you create a world around that belief. And so when I coach with clients, I usually hit that core belief sooner or later because it's very clear that there's one or two beliefs that actually rule your world. And if you don't like the world you're in, that's what you need to change. So my world was ruled by I don't matter, I'm not valued. And if you don't have any self-worth in a romantic relationship, then I can tell you by experience, it looks like mine. It looks like being cheated on, cheating yourself, being in relationships with married people, being in relationships with people who put everything else first rather than you, people who betray you in also other ways, not only cheating, sometimes also with men who use you for your money, your status, your maybe also your looks, your way of being. So that was literally my romantic life for years. I was married and got divorced. I was twice in a very long relationship with married men. It was a catastrophe. I was in relationships with older men. I was in a relationship with much younger men, like because I was just trying to figure out how relationships work. And in the process of it, I repeated the same relationship with very different men over and over. And it took me a really sharp U-turn to get out of it and really decide consciously. So this is it. I hit my rock bottom. I'm 43 years old. This has to end. Right. So yeah.
That Yeah, it's interesting because along with self-reflection, seeing so much, and as I'm listening to you, Kim, I just can't help but think there are so many women out there that are going, okay, I feel seen. I feel heard. I've done that too. And so I think we just really appreciate how vulnerable you're being and how honest you're being and how, that drive. And there's all these, you talk about kind of your initial wiring. And I loved what you said about how you could just rest on your laurels and say, this is just who I am. This is what I am. This is who I am. But you've chosen not to. So you've already had this big path of evolvement and change and shift and, it just continuing to grow. So what's your next level growth? What do you see?
Thank you for asking that because it also reminded me the initial question was how did the ambition affect my private life, right? And I would say the ambition, because it was based on, again, avoiding, on fear of not being enough, it was fueling a lot of different things, not only the good things, but also the bad things. And the good things were not even really good because, again, it didn't have the right energy, right? I couldn't sustain being a Yale professor because it was fueled by the wrong energy from begin with. I had to change anyways. I could have stayed in mathematics, by the way, if I had been able to change the energy, how I do math, how I show up. So it's not really, you don't need to quit your job. Like, if you want to start over, you just need to change the energy that drives you. So when it comes to ambitions now, I mean, I'm very careful not to do things from a point of fear or anger or contraction. I really am careful to make decisions from a point of expansion, of joy and fun and happiness and ease and flow. So when it comes to that, what is next is for me extremely scary because right now we're in such a turmoil in the world on a political level, on an economic level. A lot of my clients feel a bottleneck when it comes to finances. And, a lot of people feel bottlenecks right now because they're like, I don't know how to move forward. A lot of people in techs, they're thinking, wow, what is happening also with AI? And so we're in the middle of it and thinking forward. And what is next for me is also, funny enough, not really my choice, but my next step is actually to really let my soul and my higher self step in and lead the way. And in that sense, Kim herself is just serving that whatever comes up. And whatever comes up is I do have a direction of what I want to contribute in this lifetime, what I have to offer, how I want to show up, what kind of relationships I want. I created a whole roadmap for myself that goes really into detail. However, the next task or the next mission is really something that will appear in front of my nose. And I have to be honest, I'm not really only excited for it. I'm actually pretty scared because it's such a volatile time. And I know that whatever task or mission is going to show up in front of me is probably going to be huge and not going to be, super easy. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if it does.
Totally. And I had a conversation with Marsha Martin on the Trailblazers podcast. She's an incredible woman. And we went into talking about inner self and higher self and being able to step into that. It takes a degree of bravery, lots of self reflection, and lots of inner work as well, right? Deep inner work. What does it mean to you for the next phase where you said, your next phase is, I don't know, maybe staying true to your higher self? What does that mean for you? And then taking the step towards that.
Yeah, for me, serving my higher self means to really feel into my higher self and do whatever my higher self would do. So I'm really careful not making decisions from Kim because Kim wouldn't go to Egypt next week. Kim wouldn't be an entrepreneur. Kim just wants to, stay a lot in bed, read a book, and get a paycheck every week. I do know that there's a part of me that why did I ever leave corporate world? Why did I ever leave the film industry? I was getting paychecks and I didn't have to worry about getting new projects myself. I was fine. Why did I change? And so I know Kim wouldn't get me to the next level, but my higher self does. And when I'm saying higher self, by the way, I know this is a big word for a lot of people, and it's a word that we use a lot in personal growth. But for me, just to tie it down, I base my higher self on the archetypes, and I use the studies of Carl Jung. And so when I talk about the archetypes, for me, I talk about the archetypes without their shadows and those archetypes that I pull out of my own experience in life. Everyone has their own superpowers and moments where they completely exceeded expectations, right? Whether it was in leadership or in love or in getting things done without complaining or in magically making things happen and you look back and think how did that even happen. These are the moments I built my archetypes upon and also my clients archetypes, and the combination of those archetypes I call it the higher self. So in that sense, it's not invented, it's a part of you that operates on such a higher level. That is why I call it the higher self. So Serving that higher self is really consistently thinking back to those moments when we exceeded the expectations, also our own expectations, and trusting that we can continue to operate in such a way with whatever happens, with whatever mission comes up, in whatever way we need to step forward.
So, Kim, before we get into our last couple of questions here, you've talked about how you work with clients and some of the things that you're doing. So, I'd love for you to share, like, what are you excited about right now in how you're serving people? What's lighting you up? And ultimately, how can people get a hold of you?
Mhm. Yeah. So, full disclosure, I've never wanted to run retreats. After producing for so many years, I thought, what? This is just another production. But a friend of mine approached me to ask me if I would run a retreat with her. And I said 3 times, no, absolutely not. And somehow I still got roped in. And after the retreats, the first retreat, I was like, okay, I'm done. Goodbye. But then the feedback came in, and we had so many absolutely mind blowing shifts of our participants. Like one participant tripled his income within a month, another participant who had a really troubled past with men, she found her boyfriend 4 days after retreat and they're still together. It was my first retreat. My sister, who came to the retreat, in the meantime, she switched hospital and now is in a leading position in anesthesia and also doubled her income, or even more, I would have to ask her. But there were so many shifts that happened that were absolutely mind-blowing to me, and I understood that if I can facilitate such a change in people, there's no way I can give that up. It's my obligation, my duty to humankind to offer this, right? So my retreats are really an offering. I'm not making a lot of money. I'm not charging a tremendous amount when you compare to other retreats, but the breakthroughs are immense and I've seen it over and over at this point. So the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, drkimdang.com or drkimdang.com/retreats if you go straight to the retreat page. And what I'm excited about for other people actually working with me is that I have this very systematic and structured framework. You know, what we call a lot of woo in this industry, like the spiritual approach of looking at life. I was able to boil it down into a 8-step process of reinvention that is extremely tangible, extremely practical. In a way, I would want anyone to teach it to me. And it took so many years to simplify it, to understand it. And it incorporates and you can, if whether you come from the law of attraction or law of assumption or Eckhart Tolle or Buddhism or manifestation or the business world of productivity, you will see that it has a place in the bigger framework that I'm offering. So you don't learn something new, you build upon what you've already learned.
That is beautiful. And Kim, what you just said there, I'm going to give you my translation and you correct me if I'm wrong on this. But what I heard is essentially come as you are. Like, come with your beliefs. Come, into this and all that you're asking is that they're open. Is that right?
Yes.
And that I think is what is a huge differentiator for you because it is really easy to walk into a retreat and or your next mastermind style whatever or whatever it is that's being promoted and you have somebody that's trying to sway you towards their beliefs and I think where you stand out and where you're different Kim is you're coming like saying arms wide open, come as you are and we're just going to enhance and build upon that system that you have to make you even better. And so that's what we appreciate so much about what you're doing.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you for translating it. It reminds me of, I give a framework to find your own strategy, a framework to find your own way through life, which is super important, especially through turmoil. I'm not the one who telling you what to do ever. But once you come to the retreat and the moment you leave, you know your own strategy, you know yourself, you know how to trust yourself. And that is really the big difference from me to other people. I do not care what you believe, what has been working for you. I just want you to understand what your own skill set is, where your own superpower lies, what you can fuel yourself with so you live a life that is easy and joyful and full of love. And that is really what we're looking at. And I do not change people, I just unlock something in them that was there all along.
It
Mm.
also sounds like there's alignment going on, that we all go through phases of transition or change and all of those things. And it sounds, Kim, to me like you make sure that whoever comes to you in a retreat form, coaching, whatever it is, it's more about what's in alignment with them on the inside and the outside. Because you said before there was misconception about you and how you probably felt the outside world was seeing you compared to how you saw yourself. And it's trying to figure out how the internal and the external environments, let's say, match. So you have that joy, that happiness, that gratitude going forward.
I really believe as within, so without, as below, so above, yin yang, feminine energy, masculine energy, and all is in balance. It needs to be in balance. Well, I came into this world like this, right? A balance of north and south, the neutrality of Switzerland, but also the freedom of the American mindset. And so this is really what I'm about. If you want to change things outside, you need to look at what causes it on the inside. And so the alignment happens really, but first inside, but also outside. I do not believe that you can meditate or feel or think yourself to success alone. I really do believe also in asking the right questions and taking inspired actions, but also letting go. So there's a real recipe to it. And only if you go through all the steps, you actually have 100% guarantee of things coming to life and coming into your 3D world that you want. And it doesn't matter what you want. It really doesn't matter. I had a client once who said, I want to be enlightened. I'm like, okay, great. Let's work on that. I have clients with really big goals. That's why they come to me because there's not a cookie cutter recipe for that. It's really, they need to find their own way, and no one else can see that strategy, that way, that path in front of them. No one can create that path in front of them but them. And I'm just there to, yeah, unlock the possibilities and unlock the part inside of them that gives them the clarity, the certainty, and the confidence to do so.
So I only have one more question, and I've been thinking about this throughout this whole conversation. I think that for high achievers, you said something early on, Kim, where you were talking about like your vision for your life is so big and you know that like it's never done. You're never just going to be like, okay, great. Here I am. I hit it. It's wonderful. I'm wrapping up. That's not true. So, for all of us high achievers out there who strive for, I'm going to say more, but more by very different definitions. More isn't always more money, more power, more, you know, success. It can be more peace. It can be more freedom, whatever your more is. Kim, if we were at the end of your road, at the end of your life, and you knew you only had a day left, and you're reflecting back, what would make you feel like this entire journey was worth it?
That I actually honored the wanting more. Because if you don't honor your want of more, you're dying. It's like the moment people think, oh, this is enough, they settle, they internally start to die. Everything deteriorates from there. the more is really a thrive, a want for expansion, for experiencing more, for changes, for growth. And as long as you want more, it means that you're growing. And that is actually also a way life force can come through you. The moment you don't want more, you're dying. And it's something that took me a long time to understand because I am coming from a Buddhist teaching of, oh, you shouldn't want more, right? But we're not talking about the egoic want of more necessarily. We also talk about the more of expansion, of growing, of learning, of experiencing. So I think if I have my last day and look back, I really want to see that I lived a life without settling.
Well, Kim, this has been more than a pleasure. It has been so wonderful having this conversation. And, for our listeners out there, I trust that you have taken notes on some of these things and really thought about, like, what is your more? And, what is it that you want? And allowing that inner voice to really speak to you and call you to that next level and where you're meant to be. So, Kim, we are so grateful for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tisha, Brittany. This was so lovely. This room was so lovely. And thank you, everyone who listened in.
If this episode supported you, share it with a woman you respect and want to lift up.
Join our free Trailblazers community, the space where high-achieving women finally feel met.
You'll find the link in the show notes.
Until next time, keep moving forward, keep listening to yourself.
And remember, you deserve support too.